Keeping an eye on Pakistan's problem and aggressively looking for their solutions. Welcome to Hawk Eye with Faisal Awan. इन फिजाओं से आगे जहां और भी हैं.
Ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. Today we have a very distinguished guest with us. She is a very renowned British journalist who caught the headlines of the worldwide media when Taliban captured her and she subsequently accepted Islam. She is the one who broke the story for prisoner 650 in Bagram, Dr. Aafia Siddiqui. And yes, this is none other than Sister Yvone Ridley, who is with us, and we'll talk with her about the case of Dr. Aafia and the verdict which was given by American court regarding Dr. Aafia's case, in which they sentenced her for 86 years. Practically speaking, that was a lifetime sentence. Sister Yvone Ridley, very warm welcome to our show, and Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam, and thank you for inviting me.
Today we, as I mentioned, we'll talk about Dr. Aafia's case, and you are the best person, the best analyst who can throw some light on the current verdict and the case of Dr. Aafia. How do you think Dr. Aafia ended up in Afghanistan? There are very different stories running around in the media that she was captured she was kidnapped from from Karachi, or she was in Afghanistan only. What's the true story behind her being ended up in Afghanistan?
Well, I believe that she and her 3 children, aged 6 months, 2 and 5 years, were kidnapped and taken eventually to Afghanistan in a joint operation organized by the Pakistani intelligence at the request of the Americans. And she ended up separated from her children. In fact, I think the last time she saw her children was when they were ripped from her in that car in Karachi, which had been stopped. And she ended up in Bagram. And we know this because Binyam Mohammed, a very famous ex-Bagram and ex-Guantanamo detainee, saw her there and is prepared to give evidence via video link to the Americans in courts that he saw her in Bagram. Dr. Gerhard Bahir, who is a hugely respected Afghan ambassador who was based in Islamabad, he spent 6 years in some of the worst prisons that the Americans were running in Afghanistan, and he told me that she was put in the cell next to him in Bagram. So there are 2 very credible eyewitnesses. There are others who saw her in Bagram, and her mental and physical state was so wretched that the entire prison went on hunger strike until the Americans removed her. Now that was back in July 2005. So we know that at one stage she was in Bagram. Whether they moved her around the facility or not, we don't know. What we do know from the International Red Cross is that the Americans have now admitted there were facilities in Bagram that the ICRC never got anywhere near. Although I suspect that the Red Cross may have seen her, but on the record they will not discuss these issues because they say it's part of their deal when they visit prisons not to discuss what they've seen.
Not even on the humanitarian basis, they are not allowed to raise voices that this is how the prisoners have been treated by the American forces.
They won't even tell me if they've seen female prisoners, but what I do know is that last year they visited 95 different facilities where prisoners were being held in Afghanistan.
How did you come to know first about Dr. Aafia's torture at Bagram and Dr. Aafia herself?
Well, I'm a patron for Cage Prisoners, which is a London-based NGO which concerns itself with the detainees who've been swept up in the war on terror. And Aafia was first brought to my attention in 2004, but to my eternal shame, I didn't quite believe this story that the Americans could kidnap a mother and her baby and two toddlers. I just thought it was, I just wasn't convinced, you know, it's, at the time. Then, when Mozambique was released from Guantanamo, he wrote a bestseller called Enemy Combatants, which revealed the dark side of Bagram and where he saw two people being murdered. And he also talked about this woman in the next cell to him who screamed all night long. And then he was transferred to Guantanamo. When this was in the book, again I thought perhaps it's a tape recording of a woman screaming and it's part of the torture techniques, mental torture that maybe the Americans were carrying out. Then I went to Guantanamo myself with a filmmaker, David Miller, and we were there for 4 days filming a documentary. And when I came back, I went to see Moazam and I told him about what we'd seen. And he said, you know, the place that you really need to go is Bagram. It's a far, far darker place. And he told me again about the woman he heard screaming. And
when did you go there? Which year?
That was in May 2008. And I said to him, you know, perhaps this woman you heard screaming, maybe it was a tape recording. And then he gave me information which made me realize that the woman did exist. And I called her the Grey Lady of Bagram. And then we found out that her prison number was 650. And I knew it wouldn't be of interest to the British media, so I went straight to Pakistan, and Imran Khan, the leader of Tehreek-e-Insaf, a former international cricketer, provided a platform for me where more than 100 media turned up. I told them about the Grey Lady, and I said, this is as much as I know, and I need your help. Please, please help me. This woman is still there, at least.
And that was the time when President Musharraf was ruling Pakistan.
This was July 2008. So
he was the president, basically.
Right.
That time.
Well,
what was the government's reaction after you broke the story?
The government.
Do you think the government knew this case before you broke the story, or they were totally unaware of the story?
No, the government were aware, and there are probably some even worse stories that they're aware of, but obviously they're not going to publicise them, and I appealed to the people to help me. The Americans, including the ambassador in Islamabad, Ann Patterson, said I was a fantasist and I was making this up. But I then enlisted the help of Lord Nazir Ahmed, and we had some more specific information, and he contacted the ambassador in London, and they responded in the end and said, actually, we made a mistake. Yes, there was one woman in Bagram. Her prison number was 650.
Who said that we made a mistake? The ambassador, British ambassador, you said?
The American
The American ambassador.